Hello everybody, it is Ebontis and you are here to hear about Legendary Shards. Now, this video is going to cover the broad spectrum. You could be a new player and you don't have a lot of these to just waste per se, which is how some of the things I'm going to tell you to do are going to feel. On the other side, you may be one of those people that have been playing for a decade, you've farmed them, you've cheesed them, whatever you want to say. Maybe you have like 40,000 of these things. There are places to spend them, and my goal is to cover your options and then kind of give you one of the best backups if you just are still rolling in Legendary Shards to kind of convert them at least over to a bit of a backup glimmer supply. So let's jump in and let me discuss Legendary Shard options. And the first is going to be Xur. So let's go to EZ at least for today. Now that's probably the most important for newer players. That's why I'm starting here. Every week between now and the end of Season 23, and depending on how long this lasts, again, I don't know if some of these Legendary Shard costs at Xur, for example, or in one of my later examples, are going to change in Season 23. I'm not entirely sure. The only thing they mentioned in the TWAB so far is the fact that Monuments of Light and then Focusing are no longer going to have a Legendary Shard cost. They don't mention Xur, they don't mention the Phantasmal Fragments I'll cover later. So that's why, like, Rahul probably going to get rid of his costs for him. The Monuments of Light, the Focusing. But I will tell you, Season 23, there's a couple of these currency exchanges I'm not sure about, so this is a priority. Every week, whatever character you feel you could use a legendary, you could use an exotic roll on, and just a random roll of something that's probably not from this year, you should be spending 97 shards every time. Main reason is that is got to be one of the cheapest ways to get a roll on an exotic, especially if you might be missing some on, say, a character you don't play that often, you're a newer character. This has got to be the best way. Currencies and other things, there's only one other currency I might put equal to this, but especially if you're a newer player, this has got to be the best bang buck for you. So every bang for buck, I can't speak, but every single person should be spending 97 shards at Xur every week just to get something, because an exotic may have a god roll, and if you don't have a god roll on whatever it is, maybe you will, and for 97 shards, that's pretty damn cheap. So every week, buy this once per account. Alright, so the next place to spend your Legendary Shards is going to be at Master Rahul, and this one is important, because Ascendant Alloys do not come from a lot of places. They are extremely rare for weapon crafting to get your enhanced perks and all those things, and there's not a lot of great places to get them. You'll get one or two here, one from Gunsmith if you rank him all the way up to 16 in a season, but not everybody does that depending on how much you play. Depending on how many Legendary Shards you have, this could be a good spend for you. Now, if you have like 10, 11, or 30 stored up, then obviously you don't need to like buy more of these things. If you're sitting in the mid-20s, you're probably good for a while. But on the other side, if you're somebody who doesn't have that many and Legendary Shards, you're like, hey, I got about, a few thousand Legendary Shards. Should you buy a few of these? Probably. I have only 11. Now, granted, I'm not one of the crazy people who have farmed everything to be completely maxed to capacity all the time, always and forever. So it's like once a week between now and at least the end of Season 23, I am 100% going to come over to Rahul and drop 400 Legendary Shards here. Now, the one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to buy the enhancement prisms. Now, why would I not do that? Well, the main reason is you can farm those on other places. If you're up for legendary lost sectors as a solo player, you can get those. So if you go look at the lost sector and we come over here, it says enhancement cores. I've also seen prisms from those as well. So every so often you might get a prism there. One of the easiest things you can do though, before anything else that might have a question mark in front of it, it's this. The Hero Nightfall. Now this week we have 2 times rewards for a prime example of why you shouldn't probably spend too much on prisms, is you can get them very easily if you need them. So if you go to a Hero Nightfall, you'll probably get like 1 to 2. Just how it goes of enhancement prisms. And then enhancement cores, you might get 3 to 4. But when it's double Nightfalls, I ran 1 Hero Nightfall. It's match made. It's not that hard. It might take you like 12 minutes. And I might get like 6 or 7 cores. I might get 2 to 3 prisms. The weapons are pretty rare on Hero, I'll be honest there. You might get an exotic, you might not. But if you're getting cores and prisms, and especially if it's a double Nightfall and you can run, let me run 3 Hero Nightfalls, and I end up with like, I don't know, 6 to 9 prisms for just running a couple of strikes that are not that hard to do and you're match made into them. That's probably one of those reasons why I would actually advise against buying prisms. Now, if you have a lot of shards, but you don't have that many prisms, sure, buy the 1 a week. Not the end of the world. Your 400 shards, you could spend them worse. Cores, these are not that hard to come by, and I feel like we're going to be getting more access to these. You can buy 5 every day. I kind of wanted to test it and see. but I don't think you should be spending 150 shards every day just to stock up on cores, unless you really are low. Depending on your legendary shards, those are the priorities. But this got to be the rarest currency. Like Zur, free exotic for 97 shards, absolutely buy that every week. Ascendant Alloy, so you're not running like campaign missions to have a chance at Ascendant Alloy to drop. I would probably stock up on these. Cores and Prisms, these are way easier to come by. I would make this less of a priority unless you really are just low, or you know you've got like 40,000 legendary shards and you may as well just spend them on something. Like if you got 40,000 legendary shards and you're sitting at like 50 prisms, yeah, buy one every week, buy one every week, buy some every day and just stock up, because why not? But also don't just spend it here. If you have like 3,000 to 4,000 legendary shards, there are better places to put that currency. Now up here in Material Exchange, if you're going to take your cores and, you know, turn them into Glimmer, and again, same thing here, spending the prisms. If you're rolling in prisms, then you can just start buying shards. It's really up to you what you want to do. This, I would say, is the highest priority though. Now, those are a couple of the main ones. So you've got Zur, you've got Cryptarch, you've got Shards and Alloy. Before I come back and talk about like Glimmer and Currency Exchange, I do want to mention one thing. So let me go over to Hawthorne. Hawthorne has one specific thing that you should consider for Legendary Shards, and then you should probably be done. And that's raid banners. As it sounds like the Legendary Shards used as a currency in Season 23, I don't know how far that's going to be stripped out. Maybe they leave these in here because they're also leaving the Glimmer ones in here as well. But being as it's 50,000 Glimmer and you can only buy like 5 stacks before you're out of Glimmer, I would probably get yourself about 2 stacks of raid banners going into Season 23. That's only going to be like 600 shards. And again, if you're low on shards, maybe it's 1 stack and try not to place them as often, and hopefully your fire team will. Now, I wish they would just like get rid of raid banners that you have to buy and then make them available, make the like mission style rally banner available for everybody all the time if you need it, but that's just a me thing. Either way, you probably want a stack or 2 of these. So not too expensive, whether you've got a lot of shards and you get like, you know, 2 or 3 stacks, you've got less shards, you get 1 stack. Make sure before the end of Season 23, you've got 1 stack of raid banners. So you got 100 for whatever use you need them for going forward. It's not a bad thing to have. So get yourself at least 1, maybe 2 stacks as they go in a stack of 100 at a time. You don't need like 20 stacks filling up your consumables, but 1 to 2, probably worth your time. Now, back at Rahul, there's one other thing that I want to mention. Now, you've got currency exchanges here for, say, Glimmer. I've got some old ones that I can convert if I've got them, just because I still haven't spent them all, so I've got some backup Glimmer. But for the average person, you probably don't even know what some of these are because they're not in the game anymore, and don't worry about them. But the goal here is you will not have access to this. It's always been nice to have your shards, quick conversion to Glimmer. It's just kind of how it's been. Now, the currency exchange is not going to be as good, but being as this one's going away, it is not a bad idea to have some backup options. And we're talking about this one, purchasing Glimmer through Phantasmal Fragments. Now you'll notice it takes 10 Phantasmal Fragments for 10,000 Glimmer. Now I'm going to go over to the moon, show you about buying those and discussing them. But like the Here Always pieces, it's 25 for 10,000. These you get on Europa from like crits and stuff like that. The Dark Fragments, it's 10 for 10,000, but you have a cap of 200. You get these from the Dreaming City. These are not something you just have in abundance, so this isn't a great conversion. And there's not really a great way to purchase either of these currencies as well, because they're stuff you just have to earn. So as of something that you can just buy and have a backup supply of Glimmer, let's go to the moon and I'll show you. Alright, so if you've made it to the Lectern of Enchantment, you will see this material exchange down here in the bottom of Phantasmal Fragment for 10 Legendary Shards. And then if you remember back at Rahul, it is 10 Phantasmal Fragments for 10,000 Glimmer. Now, is that the best conversion rate? No. That's why this should be a lower priority. You should be buying your Ascendant Alloys. Prisms, I probably wouldn't buy Prisms. Again, that's kind of a thing of a preference. If you're low on Prisms and you're newer to the game, maybe a better place for you. But if you're newer to the game, you probably don't have Legendary Shards to expend either. That's why this is more for people with 20, 30, 40,000 Legendary Shards and really no place to put them. Even for me right now, if I just do the straight conversion of 13,700 Legendary Shards, if I take those and I convert them to Phantasmal Fragments, that is a backup supply of about 1.3 million Glimmer. It's not a bad thing to have that I could fill up my Glimmer 5 times plus just from the Phantasmal Fragments. Now, am I going to be buying Alloy over the course of the next 6 weeks instead of dumping them all in here? Yeah. Am I going to be visiting Zur every week for an exotic roll? Because why wouldn't I? It's an exotic roll for 97 Legendary Shards, and that's definitely better than 10,000 Glimmer. So this should not be a high priority for you. This is just one of the last places to spend your legendary shards. And if you're one of those with, you know, a mass amount of legendary shards and you can't find another place to spend them, this is one of the final places that you can kind of take the legendary shards that you've got and stockpile them while the conversion's not the best. It's better than losing them in final shape. And again, I don't know what changes are going to happen at the start of 23. I don't know if the currency cost here, even right now, is going to change in Season 23. Maybe these are only going to cost you, you know, 10,000 Glimmer. Then you can't spend your legendary shards. So I would watch the TWIDs, the TWABs, whatever you want to call them, to see if we get an update on like what Rahul is going to have changes for currency exchanges. Maybe they're just going to leave these as is in Season 23, and depending on what legendary shards you have going into Season 23, then you can decide, be like, all right, well, I've spent them wherever I can. This is kind of my last thing. This is my way to convert them to Glimmer. I'll do it then. But I would watch the TWABs and stuff like that before Season 23 launches, because if some of this stuff is going to change, hopefully they tell us. We'll have to see. This is kind of your last backup resource for, you know, a Glimmer supply on demand. And if you got the shards to spend it, I would definitely stockpile some in this format, because what else do you have to lose? Because you can only spend the rest of them pretty much on a time gate. And, you know, 97 at Xur, 400 for an alloy. If you want to buy a prism, you can, but I'm telling you, it's faster to farm those things anyway. So if you do an alloy and a prism every week, that's like 500. I'm only going to spend 3,000 shards between now and the end of the season. I need to put my legendary shards somewhere. This is about as good as you can ask for it. So the cost of legendary shards is going to leave all the vendors in 23 anyway. So that might be why, if you see no other video between now and Season 23, it might be worth, before the end of this season, converting whatever legendary shards you have remaining at the end of the season into these, because at least you know it'll be Glimmer. So that's kind of my advice and logic on how to spend your shards, when to spend your shards here as a last resort for a backup Glimmer supply. Now, if you have done all of those other things and you still feel like you have way too many shards and you're like, I don't know where to spend everything, you can either go to like EDZ, or you can go to, say, like Failsafe, like Devrim or Failsafe, and they have like legendary gear. If you really are this bored and want to spend your legendary shards completely before the end of the season, you're like, I have so many phantasmal fragments and everything else, I've bought everything I can. Go to Failsafe, go to Devrim, and what you technically could do is, if you want to, you can buy gear, just legendary gear, and then break it down, and you're going to get reputation at this guy. And it's not going to be the fastest thing in the world, but if you feel like you can spend some like shards, get yourself some gear, and maybe unlock one or two of these things before the end of the season, and you've got enough legendary shards that you don't have much else great to spend them on, you know, that's not a bad way to go as well, if you've already capped on what you can buy every week. So that's like the absolute last resort. Xur, currency conversions, you know, raid banners, then phantasmal fragments, and then if you are just completely out of other ideas, you can just buy legendary gear, break it down for reputation, and then, at least that way, you might be able to unlock one or two of these, especially if you need like a final push. Like if I'm at like 12 or 13 and I want to get up to like 16 and get these, maybe it's like my last few shards that I spend. But again, you need a lot of shards to probably have that be the thing you do. So that's pretty much it for legendary shards. Xur, Cryptarch, raid banners, phantasmal fragments. Absolute last resort is this guy. If you found this video beneficial, share it to somebody who maybe has a lot or a little, but again, spend them where you see fit. If you're low on a certain currency, focus on that one. If you don't have that many exotics, make sure Xur is visited. If you're swimming in a lot, you know, work on stockpiling that Glimmer with the phantasmal fragments, but somewhere, somehow, you're probably going to find some way to spend your legendary shards with all of these options. And again, there's no guarantee what Season 23 is going to have for options that you can spend them on. So I might wait till towards the end of this season. And then in that last week, outside of the ones that are like weekly lockouts, that's where you can probably figure out what you can and can't dump everything into. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like below, leave a comment if you got suggestions, maybe one of these tips that I missed. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, hit that alert bell. It's a nice free way to support me and see my future videos. If you want to find me on Twitch or Twitter, it's Ebontis over there as well. Thank you guys for all the support. If you want to go the extra mile, my Patreon link will be listed as well. So you guys are all amazing though. Thank you for showing up, and hopefully you got something out of this, and I'll see you soon.